Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today I'm going to talk through a few tips and tricks and things to consider when you're shooting using natural lighting. I personally love shooting using natural lighting. I think it looks organic and great, and it's something that's very easy to work with if you are careful about planning and picking your locations. The first thing I'm going to touch on is shooting in the middle of the day as opposed to shooting in the afternoons or the mornings. So when you are shooting in the middle of the day, obviously the sun is directly overhead, and I'm sure everyone's heard this a million times, but it will cause your talent or subject or whatever it is to have raccoon eyes, so very harsh shadows under the eyes. They're not very flattering, and if you are a small crew or a one-man band, you probably won't have the equipment to be able to fix this. So what you're going to want to do instead is try and shoot in the afternoon or earlier in the morning, around the kind of golden hour time, so the hour before sunset, hour before sunrise, hour after sunrise, hour before sunset. Got that backwards. And then there's a few hours at either side of that as well, which you can really use to create some really nice shots. So the reason you do want to shoot in the morning or later in the afternoon is because the sun is lower in the sky. So it's almost like a key light. It kind of moves a little bit, but it's kind of like a key light. And this is something that's much more workable and usable than a very harsh overhead light. Now, when you are working on shooting outside, I do recommend bringing one very simple tool along with you. It will make a world of difference. It'll make your life much easier and your shots will be much better. And that is a 3-in-1 reflector, diffuser, whatever you want to call them. They're super cheap. You get them for like $20 off eBay. They like pop out. I don't have one with me, but I'll post a photo somewhere on here. They fold out and they have a diffuser in the center of them. They normally have a gold reflector, a silver reflector, and a black side, which you can use as a negative fill. Oh, they also have a white card side as well, which is something I almost forgot, which is very handy. So if you do have one of these, make sure you pick up a stand for it and a sandbag. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to pick up a sandbag. And then essentially your reflector, once it's attached to a stand, it's a giant sail. And as soon as I do it, the wind always starts blowing. Literally like 3 days ago, I chased one along a hillside because I didn't have any sandbags with me. So make sure you pick up a sandbag, also really cheap on eBay or Amazon or wherever you buy your stuff. Anyway, so what you can do with this 3-in-1 reflector, stand, and sandbag is help to modify the light that you're shooting in. So say the sun is coming from here and you want to fill your talent's face this way, but it's a little bit harsh. What you can do is throw up your 3-in-1 as a diffuser, and it'll help soften the light, similar to like what a softbox would do on a LED light source. Another scenario is if you are shooting backlit, so you have the sun behind your subject like this, nice and at a 45-degree angle in the sky or wherever abouts it's sitting, but not directly over, because we don't want that, 45-ish. You've got a nice backlight, but your subject's face is, or the front of your subject is underexposed. What you can do is set up the reflector with a white card and use it to bounce light back from the sun onto your subject's face, and that will create some fill. Some people also like to use the silver side or gold side. They will look a lot harsher, and the gold will obviously make your subject look kind of gold, but there are options as well. But typically I try and go with the white card unless I'm shooting a wider shot and you're kind of really far away from your subject. If you're really far away from your subject, your white card won't be able to bounce light effectively onto your talent. So what you're going to have to do is probably use a silver side, just so you can really punch that light in. So beyond bringing something like a 3-in-1 reflector to help improve your shots, one thing you should really be doing is planning and picking time of day. So I've done lots of jobs where we've had to shoot, say, a corporate video, for example, and the interviews have been at 9 AM and the B-roll's been at midday and they want it outside. And so you can't really shoot anything nice outside at midday unless you get lucky and you have some nice cloud cover or something like that. But if you don't, you're just gonna have really harsh light just showering onto your talent's head, and it's gonna cause crazy shadows, and it's generally not what you want. So what I'll do typically with, say, corporate videos, for example, is I will try and plan to shoot interviews when the light is going to be the worst outside. So for example, say the shoot is scheduled from 2 PM to 6 PM. We'll try and shoot all the interviews earlier in the day, and then all of the B-roll later in the afternoon when the sun is a bit lower in the sky and it's a bit more usable. Planning your shoot like this can really, really improve how your projects end up looking. Another thing to consider is location. So if you do have the opportunity to, try and scout out your locations beforehand. There are apps like Sunseeker, and I think there's a few other ones. I think they're free, but I'm not sure what the names are. But you can use those to kind of go around to your locations and actually see where the sun is going to be in the sky at different times of the day. You can then use that to kind of plan out and schedule your shoot. Another example of this was a spec commercial I shot recently. This one was just myself, so I literally just had myself and a 3-in-1 reflector and a stand, but no sandbags, I forgot that, but make sure you bring a sandbag. And so what I did was I went to the location beforehand and scouted out and kind of saw where the sun was going to be in the sky. From there I planned the framing that I wanted and the kind of shots that I wanted, so that when it got to the time that I was actually shooting, all I had to do was set up my wide shot, make sure the lighting was how I wanted it, then start picking off the insert shots. And that makes for a really quick way to shoot a beautifully lit sequence in less than an hour. There is one thing to consider though when you are shooting, especially towards the end of the day, and that is that your color temperature will change. So for example, in this particular shoot, at the start of the shoot, which is an hour before sunset, our color temperature was set at 5600. By the end of it, we were at 6500 or 7000. So that's something you really have to be careful of. If you're shooting with a camera that shoots in a RAW codec, then you have a lot more flexibility over this, and it might not even be something you really have to think about. But if you're shooting with something that shoots like an MP4 or a MOV file or something that's like an 8-bit file, you might have to really try and pay attention to where your color temperature is sitting and how your image looks. It will be hard. I probably would struggle to remember to do it every like 10 or 15 minutes because it can change a lot. Once I got home and started reviewing the shots, I noticed that shots that were even 20 minutes apart had a pretty huge difference in color temperature. So when you're trying to edit these together in a sequence, you can really tell that the color temperature has changed. But if you are shooting RAW, this is something you can fix, but just something to be careful of. One last thing to consider when you're shooting outside is to take into account what kind of things you are shooting. If you're shooting a B-roll sequence or a small commercial or a very short testimonial or interview, it's generally going to be fine shooting in natural lighting towards the morning or end of the day. But if you're shooting a long interview, the light will change a lot, and that will reflect in the interview. You will really see the light changing. It might move past the modifiers that you've set up, and it could cause a lot of problems. So if I'm shooting a long interview, I generally try and keep it somewhere where I can control the light as much as possible. Just something to consider. But if you are shooting testimonials or you're shooting a commercial or something like that, and you only need to grab shots that are a few seconds long, you're going to be fine. So hopefully those tips can kind of help you out a little bit when you're shooting outdoors next. My one big takeaway would be plan your shoot around the time of day and location scout. I hope everyone's had a great 2020 so far, and I'll see you in the next video.